In addition to the style portfolio, we also can classify the portfolio into different type of category, right, or different type of segmentation. The second one is we look at the geography based on different market, and another one is talking about economic activity, and the final approach is like a mixture is using this called the in equity indexing or benchmark to classify different category of the equity portfolio. Now, for example, for geography, and actually it's developed by MSCI, the Morgan Stanley, and they have this indexes. They classify those index globally. All right. So how do they do that one? Well, they use the either is based on the market, the macroeconomic development, and wealth. So they classify these category into like developed country, emerging market, and those newer uh, market just coming up. We call frontier markets. So these are the MSCI classification. And why we use that way? Because again, for different economic situation and different places, they are going to involve different types of risk and return. All right. And the interesting part is that in different type of the geographic market, their correlation are different. So to diversify the risk, once again, the key is the correlation. So therefore, even though we know the frontier market and emerging market are very risky, but it provides us the diversification benefits through the low correlation. Another we use commonly seen that is a different method is using the economic activity to classify different type of portfolio. For example, the coal mining company, sometimes classified as the energy sector. Now, sector mean and that group, but sometimes those coal company, the same company can be classified by the sector called the basic material sector. So it's sometimes very confusing, right? If you face your client and you want to introduce a different so-called sector investment, so it's the energy sector or the basic material sector. It's the same one group, but it's based on different viewpoint. If you base on the consumer's viewpoint, based on consumer, then or verse based on the manufacturers from their product aspect, then you have different category. From the consumer, and that's is a market orient, right? It's a market orient. So we look at that based on how does the consumer group using different, how do they consume those material and product, and we use based on consumer. We say, well, coal mining, the coal company, it's in the energy sector because it generate power, so that I can use. For the product aspect, right, so product orient instead of using the consumer or market orient, then with different story, right? If you look at that from the manufacturer part, all right. So what are the coal? The coal is a raw material, right? A raw material to use for generate energy from the companies or firm and manufacturer firms viewpoint. These are the basic material, raw material. All right. So this is important that for us to classify that clearly, because when you introduce that one to your client, you have to understand how do they classify. Another method, of course, is a mixture, right? Between the style, geography, or economic activity, but they are actually indexing that. So it's like a benchmarking, right? To construct a benchmark. So this most of the index company as Standard and Poor's or the MSCI, they always use this method as they create a benchmark, because benchmark is very valuable. You can use the benchmark to construct different type of portfolio and different funds. So the benchmark, how do they do it? Well, they actually use that different category. For example, they could combine the the style and the geography together, and then say, well, this is the developed country or uh, growth fund versus emerging market value fund. So use that way to form portfolio, and that can even achieve a better diversification. Right? So benchmarking or indexing is another one that created more and more and more financial product. Another indexing, of course, is not based on. You don't have to base on style or geography. You can use based on economic activity. You can create a index called the index for energy sector, right? Or index for the basic material sector, and so on. So these we call the indexing approach, all right, for to classify different portfolio.